Now, there is a question that philosophers, scientists, and theologians have asked and attempted to answer throughout the centuries. It is one that we need to think about tonight, and you certainly need to think about it in your life. Here's the question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there something rather than nothing? You do realize there could be nothing. That is a possibility. But that's not what happened. There is something. There is a universe. We do exist. The question is, why is there something rather than nothing? Here's different ways you could ask it, okay? You could ask it and say, where did the universe come from? Who made the atom? Or now we know that there's something smaller than the atom called a quark. Who made that? How did everything get to be as it is? How did something so immense, so intricate, so orderly get here? How did all of this stuff that we call the universe come to be? The answer to these questions lies in the very first verse of the Bible. Isn't it amazing that the biggest question that philosophers and scientists and theologians can ask, why is there something rather than nothing, that the Bible answers it in the very first verse? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, I want to discuss this answer tonight. That is the answer to why there is something rather than nothing. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I want to discuss it tonight. I hope that you have all the notes. We're going to be having a lot of intricate notes in this series. Let me tell you a little bit about how this series is going to go. This is not a scientific exploration of Genesis 1, 2, and 3. This is a theological exploration. What we are trying to do is say, what is the main point of Genesis 1, 2, and 3? What does it say about God? What does it say about us in light of who God is? Now, I know you'll be super interested in all the scientific stuff. You know, how do we prove, disprove evolution, and all that kind of stuff. So here's what I'm planning on doing. I'm planning on working through the first 7 days, okay, of creation, and then we're going to have a night where we have question and answer, we have a discussion time about the science behind it all, and then I'm hoping, depending on how many questions you guys write down, we'll either have a science night and then a theological question night, so we'll have 2 nights of questions before we get into the second half of the series. So, over here on the table, there is a black box with little pieces of paper. If throughout this session tonight, a question comes up in your mind that we don't address and don't deal with, maybe it's a scientific question, maybe it's a theological question, I want you to go at the end of the service, write it down and put it in that black box, and we will use these questions during our question and answer time during those 2 sessions. Does everybody understand that? So you may need to, if you're taking notes and you think of a question, you might need to write it down on the back of a sheet of paper so you remember to write it down on a little sheet of paper and put it in the black box. All right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Here's the first thing that I want us to see from this verse. God existed before the universe. Okay? God existed before the universe. Now, we do not have time to dig into the in-depth study of the Hebrew language tonight in verse 1. Okay? By the way, everything that we're going to be reading originally was written in Hebrew. But the construction of the Hebrew language in verse 1 and the overall view of the Bible teaches that God existed before the universe, before space, before time, before matter, God existed. Now this tells us some things about God. If God existed before time, if he existed before space, if he existed before all matter, that's what we call the universe, space, time, and energy and matter. If he existed before all of that, then that should tell us some things about our God. Number one, he is self-existent. I'll explain what these mean if you're taking notes. Number one, he is self-existent. Here's what that means. This means that he is the cause of all things, and he is uncaused himself. That God is the causer of everything, and he himself is uncaused. Now, we know that everything in life, right? You've already been taught, if you haven't been taught, that there is a cause and effect, right? If I were to walk over to Kelsey and push her, the effect would be she would fall out of her chair. Okay? No, you would if I pushed you. There would be a cause and effect. I'm the cause, right? I'm pushing her. I'm the cause. The effect is her falling out of the chair. Right? I exist. I exist because my parents existed. Everything in the universe has been caused to be. Everything. Everything has been acted upon, and that is why it exists. Everything that you can think of right now has been caused, except God. God is the uncaused one. God is the one that was never caused. And our minds, because we live inside of time, space, energy, what we call the universe and matter, our minds cannot comprehend that. But it is nevertheless an objective truth. God is self-existent. Nobody caused him. He never came to be. He always simply has been. Now, one of the things, remember when Moses goes to the burning bush? Remember this story when Moses goes to the burning bush and the bush is burning and he walks over to it, and all of a sudden God begins speaking out of the burning bush to Moses, and he says, I want you to go to Egypt, and I want you to tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And he says, okay, but who am I supposed to say is sending me? And God responds with the word Yahweh. That word Yahweh is translated for us in our English Bibles, I am. Part of what the name Yahweh means is the self-existing one. I simply am. Before time, I am. Now, our minds can only go so far with it. But he is the self-existing one. Number two, he is self-sufficient. This is an important one as well. He is self-sufficient. If God is outside of the universe, he is self-existent. He is also self-sufficient. This means God has no needs and he depends upon no one. Everything else that is alive that you can look at needs something. Right? It's what we call an ecosystem, because everything needs everything else. All right? We breathe in oxygen. We breathe out what? Carbon dioxide. We breathe out carbon dioxide. Guess what the green plants do? The green plants take the carbon dioxide and they transform it into oxygen. What is that process called, science students? Photosynthesis. And guess what? It's got to work that way, or we don't get to exist. We depend upon the green plants to live. It's crazy to think about, isn't it? We depend upon the green plants to live. When you're a baby, you are dependent upon your parents taking care of you, to feed you, to change your teething diapers. If you don't know what that is, you will find out one day if you have a kid. There is nothing worse on this planet than a teething diaper. It's nasty. And guess what? Babies need their parents to clean them up. Everything that lives is in need. This is not true, though, of God. God does not need anything. God does not rely upon anything. God doesn't depend upon anything. Guess what? That means he doesn't need worshipers. God does not need you to worship him. You do not add anything to God when you worship him. When God created, he was under no obligation to create. He chose to create simply by his own sovereign will. Nothing caused him from the outside to create. Nothing determined that he should create. And he did not create because he needed people to worship him. Listen to this. Please listen. God gains nothing from you. God gains nothing from you. Here's another thing God doesn't need. God doesn't need helpers. So many people imagine a friendly granddad God who's kind of frantically running around trying to get things accomplished and looking for people who will help him accomplish his will on the earth. Now, make no mistake about it, we have responsibilities, do we not? Does God not give us responsibilities and things to do? Of course he does. That is for our sake, not his. God does not need your help. God can accomplish anything he wants without you. Here's another thing God doesn't need. God doesn't need defenders. One of the things that drives me crazy about a segment of American Christianity is we get so worked up when anybody says something against our God. Now, let me make myself very clear. If we have the opportunity to stand up and speak the truth about Yahweh, we are to do it. But if we don't, God is just fine. Okay? God is just fine. God is not deprived if you do not defend him. In Scripture, he is the defender of his people, not the other way around. This is why we trust in him. This is why the word faith is so important. He's the one we put our trust in because he's the one who needs no defense outside of himself. So number one, he is self-existent. Number two, he is self-sufficient. Number three, he is eternal. This means that God is, has always been, and will always be, and he is always the same in his being. Listen to me. This is what I call, I don't know what I call it. This is, have you ever eaten ice cream too fast and you get the brain freeze? You're like, oh, okay? This is what happens when you try to think of eternity, right? When you think of eternity, you're like, okay, never having a beginning, always existing, always being there. And at some point, you just kind of like, I can't do it anymore. And the reason why is because we are finite. We are created inside of time. Okay? God isn't. God is an eternal being. He always has been. By the way, you want to get super philosophical? That statement is not even accurate. Right. He always has been. That means there's a past. Not to God. Think about that later and be like, what? Trust me, that's a big philosophical statement. But listen, he's always been, he is right now, and he always will be, and his character, his being never changes. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So God is self-existent, God is self-sufficient, and God is eternal. He is unchangeable, and you cannot escape him. People who think, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God, guess what? You do not escape him. You will at one point stand before him. You cannot escape Yahweh. You cannot escape God. Second main point I want you to see tonight. God alone creates. In this verse, in the beginning, God created. That word created is a Hebrew word, obviously, and is the word bara. B-A-R-A. Bara. It is only used, that word, bara, is only used of God in the Bible. It is never used of a human being. A human being never baras. That's not good Hebrew, but you know what I'm saying. Never, ever does a human being ever create like this word says in Genesis 1:1. It is only used of God, and it means to make something new or to initiate something new. By the way, this is why theologians used a Latin phrase later on called ex nihilo, means out of nothing. How did God create? Out of nothing. There was nothing, and then God made something out of the nothing. See, that we can't comprehend that either. You know why I know you can't comprehend that? Because we did a little exercise when you came in the door. I asked you to write or draw or sketch an original creature. Okay? This was your opportunity to create an original creature. Now we got some good ones. This is by Anthony. This is a moon dog. Right? We got fangs and a snout and eyes and antennae and hair blowing backwards. We've got Logan drew this scary monster that you wouldn't want sitting at the end of your bed.
Oh my God.
A round circular mouth that I can only think is like that. Giant ears, no arms or legs, but a body I see. We got some hair going on here. Kelsey drew some sort of a caterpillar slash, what is this thing? She doesn't, this is one mouse ear. Just and an infinity symbol as a brain. What is this thing right here? That's a, just, okay, it's a face. Oh, it's, okay, so this is a regular sized tree. This, can you imagine, this is like those old, like 1930, 40 films where like all the ants are big and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, okay? This is Alyssa's. This is some sort of blob creature. At first, she didn't have a mouth on it, and I asked her, I said, does the blob just absorb food? Is that how it lives? So then she put a mouth on it with only teeth on the top row. So again, I guess this creature just pulls things into its mouth. Here's Kaylin's. We have eyes, I see a mouth, a massively deformed head, giant ears, and then for some reason thought putting earrings on this would be good. I see hair. There's good. Here's Melody's. This is pretty creative. This is a cute one. We have eyes. We have no nose. We do have a mouth. Again, just the top. Then we have legs coming down, and what are these things? Little bonbons for the feet. Cute. Andy drew a flying, it's like a flying caterpillar. It's like the butterfly and the caterpillar mixed, and she threw a pig's swirly tail on the end of it. This was drawn by Braden. This is a depressed, whatever creature this is, it's depressed. I'll tell you that right now. This creature hates being alive. There's no doubt about it. This creature does not like the fact that it is alive and exists. But we do have eyes, strangely eyebrows, no hands, just arms and pointy ends on the arms. Hourglass shape, you can notice that as well. This is Caden Tambourines. Just a three-eyed head with horns. No body. Does it float? Is it a floating head? Or it rolls. Yeah. It just rolls. Fangs. Here's Gabe's. I don't know what to say about this, guys. I don't know what to say about this.
He'll toast your bread.
Yeah, man, I don't even know where to begin. Is this the head? Where's Gabe at? Gabe, is this the head?
That's the
What are these things? That have lasers in the middle of this. Huh? Lasers, shoots lasers. What is this? Is this the mouth? That's a giant mouth. So the mouth is almost all of the head. Okay? Amen. Uvia, a three-headed, each head has 4 eyes, a nose and a mouth, and this creature is happy to have 3 heads. Look how happy that creature is. Here's Emma's. Emma's is some sort of mountain creature with a head on it. It's a frog head, eyes that go up, tongue that sticks out. Here's Jess's. A horned, fanged, and here's what you have to admire about this creature. He wears a shirt with his own face on it. That's a creature who loves himself. Some creature. America, this is a cute one. Look at this. Cute one. Molly, this looks like a house just stood up and started living. Doesn't it? It looks like a house stood up and just came alive. Just like one day the house was like,
It's Monster House. Oh my God.
here's another 4-headed creature by Caden Sandlin. And this creature has 4 heads, but every head has a different emotion, apparently. Miranda drew this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I want to do a psych evaluation on Miranda after this. Look at this thing. Look at this thing.
No, that's terrible. Awesome.
It does have a head. It has 1 ear. Kind of got Donald Trump hairdo a little bit. And then arms that are, they're not arms, just like 2 blobby things that are just sticking out of his side. Here's Madison's. Madison is a caterpillar with a fire head. She literally wrote fire stuff and then pointed to the head and said fire stuff, just in case you didn't know. Now, this is Travis's 5th attempt. We threw 4 away. This is something like a cat with one, is this just 1 shoe? 1 foot?
No, it's the body. That's a Batman belt or something.
A Batman belt. The body is sideways with 4 legs at the end. And yes, and earrings on that. Here's James. Again, this, I mean, you know, I don't know. This is just arms and legs. His name what?
It's called Sin.
Its name is Sin.
Sin.
Here's Lucas. Now, Lucas, this is pretty creative. This looks like an atomic bomb came alive. Doesn't it? Kind of looks like an atomic bomb came alive. And then Madison drew this. That's cute. Now, here's the thing, guys. We're going to put all these up on the bulletin board over there. But here's the thing. Now listen. You didn't create anything. Listen to me. Look. Not one of you created a brand new creature. What you did was borrow from things that already exist to put into your creature. You use arms and legs and heads and fire, and you use things that already existed in order to make. And here's what's interesting. In the Hebrew Bible, there are 3 words for things that humans do. They make, they form, and they make, they form, and they build. They make, they form, they build. But they do not create. Only God creates something out of nothing. You heard the story? Hey, you ever heard the story about the time that a man who wanted to defy God challenged God to a sandcastle building contest? And he said, God, I hate that you exist. I wish that I was free of you. and I challenge you to a sandcastle building contest, and if I beat you, you will stop existing. And God said, absolutely, let's do it. God said, you go first. And the man bent down in the sand and grabbed some sand to start building, and God said, use your own sand. Right? He could make a sandcastle. He could build it, he could make it, he could form it. He could not create it because he had to have sand in order to create it. When God created, he created out of nothing. Bara. He created. We human beings have never created anything. We are, as Tolkien calls us, sub-creators. We truly have never created anything. And then lastly, I want you to see that God created the entire universe. The phrase heavens and earth refer to the totality of the physical universe. All matter, all space, all time, all energy, God made it all. The phrase heavens and earth is everything. God created everything. The entire universe came into existence entirely new at a finite time by the creative act of God. Now, I want to talk about real quick. There are religions who have borrowed from the Bible. Okay? Islam is one of them. Islam has borrowed from the Bible. Mormonism has borrowed from the Bible. The Jehovah's Witnesses have borrowed from the Bible. But there is no religious book outside of the books that borrow from the Bible. There is no religious book that teaches what we just learned tonight. There's not any. All other religious books, all other views of history, believe that the universe was eternal. That time was circular. It was a series of birth and death and rebirth. Only out of all of the ancient writings you can find in the entire world, out of all the ancient writings you can find, the Bible is the only one that says time and matter came into existence when God created it. All the rest said the universe was eternal. Yes, that gods may have created, but God's created inside of the universe that already existed. The Bible teaches, no, there was nothing. And God brought it into being. There is no other religion on the planet, unless they are borrowing from the Bible, that has this radical view of history. None. And I know we're not going to do a lot of science, but you know what even science tells us? The universe had a beginning. The universe had a beginning. The Bible was saying this long before science ever figured it out. The universe had a beginning, and it came because God created it out of nothing. So this is where we begin in this series. We begin with God. And listen, guys, that's where your life has to begin. It's got to begin with God. That's why I picked this song at the end, right? He is the beginning and the end of everything that we are. Everything about you must be centered around the fact that God is. The point of all creation is to not stop by saying creation is amazing. Look at me. The point of creation is to not stop by saying creation is amazing. By the way, it is amazing. But you cannot stop there. You must go past creation to the Creator, to God. I want to read you. I hate that they call it this. It's called the C.S. Lewis Bible. I hate that they call it that. It's a Bible, and what they have done is they've gone in and they've taken quotes and they've taken passages from books and writings and letters from C.S. Lewis, and he puts it in to where C.S. Lewis was talking about certain things of Scripture. I just thought it was really, really neat. I love having this. It is not a C.S. Lewis Bible, by the way. C.S. Lewis had a Bible. I wish I had that. But in Genesis chapter 1, here's what they put with this creation story. This is taken from The Magician's Nephew, the very first book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. Actually, it was like the sixth book written, but first in chronological order. I want to read you this to end tonight. Keep in mind, creation is amazing. We go past creation to the one who was here before creation, Almighty God. Listen to this. This was as Aslan was creating Narnia. In the darkness, something was happening at last. A voice had begun to sing. It was very far away, and Diggory found it very hard to decide from what direction it was coming. Sometimes it seemed to come from all directions at once. Sometimes he almost thought it was coming out of the earth beneath them. Its lower notes were deep enough to be the voice of the earth herself. There were no words. There was hardly even a tune, but it was beyond comparison the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. It was so beautiful he could hardly bear it. The two wonders happened at the same moment. Once there was the voice. Once was that the voice was suddenly joined by other voices, more voices than you could possibly count. They were in harmony with it, but far higher up the scale, cold, tingling, silvery voices. The second wonder was that the blackness overhead all at once was blazing with stars. They didn't come out gently one by one, as they do on a summer evening. One moment, there had been nothing but darkness. The next moment, 1,000 points of light leaped out. Single stars, constellations, planets, brighter and bigger than any in our world. There were no clouds. The new stars and the new voices began at exactly the same time. If you had seen and heard it, you would have felt quite certain that it was the stars themselves who were singing, and that it was the first voice, the deep one, which had made them appear and made them sing. And as its beams shot across the land, the travelers could see for the first time what sort of place they were in. It was a valley through which a broad, swift river wound its way, flowing eastward toward the sun. Southward there were mountains, northward there were lower hills, but it was a valley of mere earth, rock, and water. There was not a tree, not a bush, not a blade of grass to be seen. The earth was of many colors. They were fresh, hot, and vivid. They made you feel excited. Listen to this. They made you feel excited until you saw the singer himself, and then you forgot everything else. We are to be wowed and to wonder at this giant universe that God has created, but we are to see past it, to see the wonder of an eternal God who made it all. And that is where we begin this series.